Hi, everyone. We'll be starting at 2:35 p.m. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cloud Kinetics webinar, Accelerate Your Cloud Journey. Today's session is jointly presented by AWS and Cloud Kinetics. We are very pleased to have you today, and we look forward to an interactive session with you all. A couple of house rules. The session will be divided into two parts, 30 minutes of presentation session followed by 15 minutes of Q&A session. We will appreciate if you keep your audio muted throughout the presentation session. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we will receive it. We will address them during the dedicated Q&A session at the end. Do know that we have some exciting prizes coming up. The first giveaway is for the best question asked. The second giveaway is free 2-day assessment. First 5 customers who contact CK with their requirements will be eligible. You can reach out to us at contactus@cloudkinetics.com. At the end of the webinar, we would be having an exciting survey for all of you. Once you fill it, you'll be able to view and download a free AWS ebook on 8 business drivers that motivate cloud migrations. For this, we recommend that you have your phone ready to scan a QR code. Allow me to introduce you to our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Nagesh from AWS, who is a partner solution architect. He's fluent with IoT, containers at AWS, Red Hat OpenShift, and 5G technologies. He designs scalable systems on AWS for modern cloud-native, DevOps-friendly applications. Our second speaker is Karthik from Cloud Kinetics. He's the founder and CTO of CK, a premier cloud transformation company. An avid business-oriented technologist, Karthik has focused on accelerating the enterprise adoption of cloud, not least because he believes in the value of the cloud paradigm that lets enterprises build their business systems in a reliable, scalable, and resilient manner. Karthik loves to share his experience gained through working with many global enterprises customers in the last decade. Prior to founding CK, Karthik worked in infrastructure teams at companies such as Citrix, CSS Corp, British Telecom. Without further ado, Nagesh will begin his presentation. Over to you, Nagesh.
Thank you, Ankita, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nagesh, and I'll now start with an introduction to AWS and get deeper into migration capabilities. Take a minute to introduce a recently announced service on migration, and then pass it on to CK to explain the role of partners, explain the role of CK in the migration journeys. So let me start by sharing my screen. Just give me a quick second. Okay, so just a quick introduction into what is cloud and what is AWS, Amazon Web Services. So to begin with, we are a broad and a deep platform to help customers to migrate and build sophisticated, scalable, secure applications on AWS. So what does this really mean? Traditionally, software application development also meant the ownership of the infrastructure, but with AWS, we get you the customer gets the on-demand delivery of IT resources with pay-as-you-go pricing. So there is no more buying, there is no owning, maintaining data centers and servers. You just acquire the compute, storage, database, and other services on an as-needed basis. It's literally similar to the experience that we have with utility companies, where we just turn on the switch and consume the service and pay proportionately. AWS will manage and maintain the technology of the underlying infrastructure in a secure environment so that you, the customer, can build on the value for your end customers. So when we say AWS as an organization, there are some interesting aspects that I would like to quickly call out. Everything we do starts with our customers and we work back from there. So 90 to 95% of our roadmap is driven by customer feedback. So one of the leadership principles that we follow in AWS is customer obsession, and that is where we demonstrate that principle by using the roadmap driven by customer requirements. Right, we are inventors and pioneers, and we have some demonstrated our capability in terms of announcements of some really path-breaking technologies. And we're also long-term thinkers. So we are here for the long overhaul. We are not here for a quick short-term relationships. So when we say this aspect of our company in terms of the services that we provide, I just wanted to quickly walk you through some of the features that we provide. So as as a cloud computing organization, we have one of the broadest and the deepest set of functionalities. So there are a vast number of services that are available. And the key messaging basically here is the nature of workload is such that we can have it migrated onto AWS. So we have a number of services that are aligned to literally any kind of workload that a customer could possibly have, right? So whether it is Internet of Things, machine learning, enterprise applications, even hybrid architecture or analytics, we have a huge collection of services that is ready to cater to any customer workload that might be possibly be migrated. So with that in mind, what is the advantage that AWS brings in when it comes to migration of your workloads? From based on our experience, over 1 million active customers and leading brands who have migrated to AWS, the messaging here is, given our breadth and depth of services that we offer, given the nature of engagements that we have had, given the kind of migrations that we have done in the past, we have tremendous experience in this space, which has helped us to develop our own methodology, best practices, tools, and services to help simplify and accelerate migrations, right? So the nature of the tools, the broad partner ecosystem, and a number of migration solutions, put all of them together, AWS becomes a very compelling choice to migrate the workloads. So these are some of the customer success stories. Of course, this is just illustrative. It's not conclusive or comprehensive. If you're interested, we can certainly get into a deeper discussion on the customer success stories. But just to quickly point out a couple of success stories here. With NL, we migrated almost 5,500 instances in 9 months, which has really made a significant impact, because the storage costs were reduced by 50%, the compute cost reduced by 20%, and the overall provisioning of the capacity was increased by 10 times from 4 weeks to 2 days, right? So similarly, Coca-Cola, we migrated around 600 workloads into AWS. And finally, with Washington Post, you can see the number of releases were over 50 plus per hour. Now, this is a very interesting success story here, because what this really shows is the power of cloud is not merely about migrating a workload from on-prem to cloud, or from one source environment to another source environment. The power of the cloud is you are freed from maintaining the infra to an extent that you, the customer, can work on the real business problems, so that you are able to deliver better and better features to your end customer. And for that, excuse me, and Washington Post scenario shown here is an example of exactly that, to be able to deliver vast number of deployments at literally on an hourly basis. Okay, let me take a quick minute to describe the security profile of AWS organization. Now at AWS, we say that security is job zero, which means whatever we want to engage, wherever we engage, the first step that we take is around security. Right? And this is also baked something onto our platform. And as you can see, we are compliant with a large number of security and compliance controls globally and regionally. So the ones that are marked here with the globe icon means this is a global standard, and others are standards that are regional to certain other geographical regions. Okay, so just wanted to pass on the message that as a platform, as an organization, the global security and compliance controls is something that the platform has it from the start. So what are some of the benefits of migrating to the cloud or to AWS? right? So based upon the experience that we have seen after thousands of migrations, we see that on an average, the infrastructure cost savings are around 31%. And because the managed services take care of security aspect also, we have fewer and fewer security incidents per year, especially keeping in mind the previous slide, right, where we showed that the platform aligns with so many global and regional security controls. The number of security incidents are reduced by around 43%. If you put these two things together, the savings in the infrastructure cost and the reduction in the number of security incidents, it is not very difficult to see that the IT staff productivity will be increased, because now the IT staff productivity is focused more on delivering the end result or the end solution, rather than worrying about the infrastructure or the security aspect. So when the IT staff productivity is boosted higher, then it is clear that more and more features will be delivered per year. So almost 3 times the number of features are delivered per year as a result of improved IT staff productivity, right? Now, when we look at the benefits from the point of view of the possible workloads, this is how it looks like. And before I go deeper into the stats, let me call out that AWS today runs workloads from Microsoft, SAP, VMware, Oracle, and even IBM mainframes too. So in terms of stats, Microsoft workloads, AWS hosts twice more the Windows server instances than any other cloud provider. SAP, we have more than 5,000 customers. VMware, we actually have an exclusive partnership that has helped hundreds of customers to reduce their infrastructure costs by almost 40%. Oracle, we have over 350,000 databases migrated to AWS. And with mainframe, the annual saving cost is over 70%. So those are the benefits of migrating to AWS. Now, let me take a moment to show you how the migration happens with AWS. So broadly speaking, we have three categories when it comes to migration. We have the assess phase, we have the mobilize phase, and the migrate phase. And you can see we have a number of services that align to each of these individual phases. Very recently, we had announced a new service called as AWS Application Migration Service, which is also called as MGN in short, which aligns to mobilize and migrate phase. So let me take a quick moment to describe this solution. So this service, AWS MGN, is a lift and shift solution. It's actually a wrapper on top of Cloud Endure migration. It's a highly automated lift and shift solution that simplifies, expedites, and reduces the cost of overall application migration to AWS. This is an example, sorry, this is a case study from Inmarsat, where the migration was over 1,500 servers to AWS, and they averaged 120 servers per month. So this is quite a high velocity of migration. This was achieved with AWS Application Migration Service. Also, basically, it's a wrapper on Cloud Endure migration. Now, once the migration is completed, how do you operate the migrated workload? So there are three operating models when it comes to migrating the workload onto the cloud. One is self-managed, second is AWS managed services, and third is using the partner managed ecosystem. So specifically on the partner managed aspect of operating the cloud, what are some of the benefits of involving a partner? And why do we involve a partner? And basically speaking, the simple answer to that question is the data shows that customers who use a consulting partner have had their migrations done almost 25% faster. And this isn't just because the partner participated only in the change management, but simply because the partner brings a great deal of experience onto the table as their value in the migration journey. So this means the customer is then focused on delivering the business outcome faster, whereas the actual migration journey is executed for the customer with a partner. So say, for example, Cloud Kinetics. And in many instances, what happens is the customer organization is very deeply involved in keeping the system running than focusing on the challenges of migration, whether it is from the assess phase or the mobilize phase or in the migrate phase. But it is the partner who comes in with this deep experience in these three phases to be able to not just chalk out a plan, but to actually execute the migration from on-prem to cloud. So Cloud Kinetics is one such partner who can help you do the migration of your on-prem workloads into AWS faster. And I would now like to hand it over to Karthik from Cloud Kinetics to call out the contribution of Cloud Kinetics as a partner in the migration journey. I'll stop my share and over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Nagesh. Good afternoon, everyone. Give me a couple seconds so that I can bring up my screen. Very, very happy to have all of you here today. Hi, I hope all of you can see my screen clearly. So before I start, and in the general theme of migrations, right, so we will continue on what Nagesh spoke about. The focus of this webinar is to discuss for folks who want to know more about the migration process itself, right, and therefore focus more on the assess part and what are the new things that AWS have brought in over the years to help customers move through the assessment with a clear mind, with a clear focus, understand the TCOs, understand the benefits, and plan a migration, right? So with that said, let me say a few sentences about CK, not take too much time here. I am the founder of Cloud Kinetics, founded Cloud Kinetics in 2012 in India. We are a Singapore headquartered company with offices in Singapore, all over ASEAN and the US. Right? India is our largest market. We have served a lot of customers in India, 150 plus customers in India over the last 9 years. We are part of the portfolio of I Squared Capital, which is a $26 billion American private equity fund today. We are proud to say that with the merger with InfoFabrica last year, we have served about 450 plus customers throughout ASEAN, and we have 325 plus cloud certifications. So many cloud migrations, you can see the data here. What I want to highlight here is particularly our experience right from the day one in working with AWS. we are a premier AWS partner, which is highest level of partnership. We are a certified MSP. We also possess cloud migration competency. These three have helped us, we basically helped cement our position as a very, very experienced partner having a lot of expertise in helping customers migrate. And we've been doing this, we have done for customers as early as 2014, 2015, when it was more nascent in service and there was a lot more manual effort involved. From there all the way to today, when there's a lot more services to enable, like Nagesh mentioned about, Cloud Endure, application evaluator, migration evaluator, and application and discovery tools, it's much more automated, not necessarily easier, but much more automated. The other thing I want to highlight here is our partnership with VMware. We are one of the very few VMware launch partners on AWS. So which basically gives us the ability to also, there are larger customers who have made an investment in VMware and, thinking about what it takes to basically, eat the investment and move over to AWS, but you can actually bring your VMware environment to AWS as well. And we are a consulting partner there. With that said, let me move on to the next slide. What are the common migration drivers? Right? Let me start with that, and we'll talk about some of the most common migration drivers we've seen for our customers include agility. Data center consolidation is one, but for most customers in the mid-level segment, it's about agility and the innovation and digital transformation. Right? So customers are aware. Right? It's been about 15 years since AWS came to the market with this service, right from 2006. So customers are aware that it gives them this unparalleled agility to think about and execute very quickly. The difference between planning something and getting it onto the market, especially if they're a product vendor, is superb. From there on, the other costs, other drivers being data center consolidation being one, where primarily when customers want to either take away their costs in maintaining their own data centers, as we've seen with many customers, or more importantly, once the tech refresh cycle comes and they want to, they come to the end of the cycle of contract with their co-located providers, right? That's where the bulk of the savings happen for customers who want to move into the cloud. There is a lot more planning and there's a lot more, timeline-based, milestone-based migration. And I think we'll talk about one of the case studies where we help the customer set a timeline, right? They had a 3-month timeline to move out of the co-located provider and end the contract, and how we were able to help them do it successfully. But that's one of the reasons, right? Some customers, specifically with very, very specific use cases on products, require large-scale compute-intensive workload. But again, not forever, right? So it's a huge investment on capital, but they might have it only for 2 days a month or 3 days a month, or high performance computing. Same goes with a lot of investments on BI, right, which basically is used only maybe a week a month. But why would customers invest in hardware for that? So that's one of the other reasons why customers want to use that for seasonal workloads, so to speak. And then, of course, the ability for one of our largest customers, in the case of Sony, who basically can scale up from, a few users using, using the Sony OTT platform, Sony Live, to watch Kaun Banega Crorepati, to suddenly, a few million subscribers using it for a peak one, like to watching the World Cup football final. So that scaling up in a matter of minutes and scaling down is a very, very important factor for a lot of what we call Web 2.0 and e-commerce and media companies. Last but not the least, the cost reduction, right? So in a value sensitive market such as Asia, as in everywhere else, cost reduction does play an important factor in, and the ability to not have to invest the capex dollars into buying hardware, and be able to take it as an investment into OpEx, budget as OpEx. That's a great driver for a lot of folks who want to get into that. Before we get into further details, I'll spend a couple, maybe a minute on this one. We just need to be clear on what does cloud computing mean for a customer, right? So ideally, in a definition, what we help customers with is, how do we define that? What's the whole purpose? Are we able to use reliable best of breed, whether it's infrastructure as a service like AWS, or SaaS platforms like Salesforce, right? Or platform as a service like Gmail? If we are able to use them off the shelf and focus on our core business, which could also be IT driven for that matter, that's a great thing. And that's the whole idea behind enabling cloud computing or utilizing cloud computing. Is cloud computing the only solution? Not really. There are regulated industries in every country that have data residency rules, right? And depending on the industry, such as BFSI, telco, there are very clear rules, and definitely healthcare. The industries are more regulated, and there's a thing about data residency being in country. So we are lucky with all the major cloud providers having data centers inside India. From an Indian perspective, AWS has data centers in India, in Mumbai. So that's been a great thing for many BFSI. It's been a great accelerator for BFSIs the last 4 or 5 years to move into AWS cloud. If you're a very, very local focused business, and I say local literally in terms of being either local to Mumbai, local to Delhi, Hyderabad, where you are able to, you don't need to serve, or you're not looking at markets at other geographies, and your latency is basically you're able to satisfy latency requirements because you're only serving customers locally or inside the enterprise. You may not require, right? It's never a bad idea because from a futuristic perspective, but you may not require. So it's also important to understand when it's really, really beneficial, so we can maximize the benefits. And then we go about how do we decide the best cloud fit, and how should we leverage the cloud benefits. I will talk about the assess and plan part for the remaining few minutes in this webinar. We want to talk about assessment. Right? How do we evaluate your current landscape and workloads and think about the best cloud move? And then when you decide and you've done the architecture, how do we plan what you can move, right? How do we design? How do we actually sit around, literally take a pen and paper, right, and talk about what is a phased migration? How do we do it with minimal business impact and customer impact? That's the key part of the planning. This planning stage, as we'll go through and look at, could take anywhere from 8 weeks to about 12 months, at the whole planning and migration. Migration, yes, it is the actual, putting the pedal to the metal part where we actually do the work. And the more planning we do upfront, as in anything else, the more smooth and seamless the migration is. And once we migrate, then we go to the steady state, and then we define about 3 months, 6 months, depending on the size and depending on the business and the applications, to talk about optimization. A little more on that, right? What we call, with terms now, it's time for some acronyms. Migration Readiness Assessment, MRA, right? Like I said, we have enabled customers, we helped customers way back in 2014, 2015, migrate about 300, 350 servers, but it took 1 year, right, with all planning. And fast forward to what Nagesh mentioned when you're speaking about, doing about 1,200 servers in a matter of a year. Most of it has been enabled with what we call automated service coming in. It does not involve too much manual labor to collect data and plan a good migration with the TCO. What does migration readiness assessment focus on? It's obviously helps a business case, because in a nutshell, we are able to gather the current inventory in on-prem, and basically identify which are the ones that can move, or rather which are the ones that definitely cannot move, and then focus on the ones that can be moved, and then also do a mapping. What is the utilization currently? And this is where the bigger customers really see the benefits even before they actually go to the cloud. They're able to see how their utilization of the current servers, the physical servers they've actually invested in, not running at more than 30%, 40%, right? And then when you do the mapping, you're able to say how you can combine some of these, or actually either into a big server in cloud, or how you can start small, constantly measure the utilization, and then go on to new one. You go on to a bigger server. That's the key part of readiness assessment. Then we talk about the readiness planning. Once you got the business case, focus on security and compliance. From a customer perspective, it's very, very important. We advise all our customers to think about operating model. What happens after migration, right? Typically, 99% of customers look to partners like us to enable them go through in an accelerated manner and in a secure manner. How do we do the migration? But after that, it's about time they build their skills themselves and focus on the future, right? Think about long term, how they want to invest in their own resources. From a design and architecture perspective, landing zone is very, very important. We will talk about it in detail when we talk about the case studies, the architecture, and the plan itself. Given the focus today, the migration and operations is for a later day, but I just want to bring it up here as once you migrate, it's not the end of story. There should be an optimization cycle defined. There should be a monitoring cycle defined for the first 3 to 6 months. Assessment in more detail, you can see on the right-hand side how it looks. The key thing is the discovery mapping. That's the difference between using tools today versus how we did it manually before. We all have spreadsheets, some of them accurate, as with respect to inventory, current inventory, and we can use that. But what about the relationships, interdependencies? That what we do in the assessment cycle helps define our planning, right? When you talk about phased migration, how do we group servers and take them? And make sure that applications are not impacted. It's not like you migrate to one phase, the application server is in the cloud and the database ends up being in the on-prem or data center, and that's not a good scene. We see some of those details here. What are the key criteria, right? Whether it's legacy systems or not, how do we port licenses, or whether we bring your own license into the cloud, which a lot of customers do, or whether we take them as a platform as a service from the cloud. Particularly when you're talking about databases, SQL databases, or Oracle databases, that's called the RDS as a service. Compliance, very important. Please talk to the partner about how they and how AWS helps support a lot of, or certified for a lot of compliance. Then we talked about mapping dependencies. How do we use authentication systems, current authentication systems on the cloud? You can use cloud-based ones, or use them as a slave, or as a complementary system to your existing AD, etc. Backup DR, very, very important. And of course, the appliances that you want to take. Right? It's very important to talk about application, right? So it's all about the business applications, right? We should spend more time on what are the applications that are critical but cannot move, and what is the plan for that, right? Do we retire, retain, or how do we go about it in the next 6 months, 1 year? Particular examples are about mainframe, right? Then we want to talk about, if it's the easiest, simplest one, right? About the applications that can be moved. They're modern. They can be moved literally in a lift and shift manner, or just rehost them in AWS. They usually form the early candidates to see the success story, for the customers to actually taste the success. And then what we see more and more now is this, how do we leverage the cloud? And customers ask about, okay, I've done the lift and shift. That's just server migration. How do they want partners like us to talk to them about, here is my application, and it's pretty, it's pretty recent. It probably uses latest stack components. How do we re-platform and refactor, right? We talk about modularization of applications, containerization, serverless architecture, These are very, very important, and using a CI/CD and DevOps pipeline is very important as well. Design considerations. Once we've done the assessment and we're ready to go, we enable, CK enables customers with architecture and design. This is the biggest piece from our solution architecture perspective. What are some of the key things, right? When we talk about design, what's the focus on availability, high availability of applications today for the customer? How do we make it better on the cloud? What are the performance considerations today, right? How do we make it the better, aligned with cost, right? We can all pay for more performance, but what are the things, beauties of the cloud, beautiful part of the cloud is we can achieve that peak performance without having to shell out a lot. And we can use that. You see all the items in the how, right? What are the technicalities we can utilize? And security and compliance, very, very important. All the tools in the cloud, which obviously mimic and mirror what we've been using in data centers for a long time, but also bring in new utilities. It's about understanding differences. Think about a current application today. When you think about how's the application running today, visualize what's using the components, web server, right? Databases, and from a network component, we have networks, switches, routers, and firewalls. Think about the same thing on the cloud. What are the tools? We can use, we can use the same terms. It's just presented in different ways, but it's also more modular, right? How you can attach drives, how you can attach the volumes, how you can utilize web application firewalls, regular firewalls. How do we use the same access control, from a network access control in a data center to talk about ACLs in cloud, in subnets, security groups at an individual level, load balancers. How do we keep subnets private and public, etc. Choosing the pilot workload is very, very important, right? Dev test environment. Typically, even if there's the very, very critical system that's identified for migration, we start with the development environment of that, with the data, with at least, with a 20% of the data, right? Which is good because that it gives a real feel for how it works on the cloud and the users are using it. That's the most common pilot workload is actually the dev test. And then, as I spoke about, the relatively modern apps, which is basically a lift and shift, right? Which is easier to migrate and really start using and testing. Then you have a longer testing cycle. And then typically the most important people, right? The business people who are using the application and what's their appetite for downtime or, the whole, the migration itself. So we need applications and business that are supportive of that, and they have a little bit of leverage in how they can, how they can take a downtime, how they can manage downtime. That's very important. These happen to be the initial pilot or the initial workloads. The reason, as I spoke, fewer system dependencies, require less data migration, compliance, very important, not too many compliance challenges, license, because you don't want to think about that in the very first pilot workload. And then you can afford a cutover window, which is out about the impact. Once we've done all that, then we talk about the execution part. Accounts and access, build with network and security, landing zone again, we'll talk about in the case study. Once we build that, then how do we measure and monitor? When I spoke about the post-migration steady state, define the baseline monitoring for availability and performance and continuously measure against that. So we know when we start small, even the lift and shift, if we start as a smaller capacity server, if that can handle it, it's great. If not, we know that before we see any business impact, we're able to, and that's again, right, we're able to vertically scale, not necessarily only horizontally, right? And then we design the backup, and DR is a concept by itself in the cloud with all the options it provides from pilot light to full-fledged, right? That's a major advantage for many customers, right, in terms of not having to think about offline DR and backups. At least not having to spend a lot on a duplicate environment in some other geographical location. Then a phase migration. We migrated, then what next? This is all about, again, the monitor, measure the user experience, very key. Look out, right? The migration is, once you migrate, maybe the first week everything works, and then you see some user degradation. It's happened, and we have seen it happen for various reasons, not the least being latencies. And so look for that and continuously tune that. Key process, backup. Backup is, again, it's a blind spot for many customers when they move to the cloud because they assume everything is there all the time. Of course, it is there, but it's a cost. So it's very important to tune the policy. We have our own Arcus platform that Kaushik will also talk about when it comes to, it's a cloud management platform that helps schedule backups, but it's important as a policy. To simplify, assess, plan, execute, and then optimize. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Kaushik here, who's the principal lead in the cloud practice for Cloud Kinetics. He's worked in Cloud Kinetics for over 6-7 years now. Has played a role in almost all of our major customers migrating to cloud, and also led up the set up the managed services for CK. And let me pass it over to him. Kaushik.
Thanks, Karthik. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about, as Karthik was saying, a couple of case studies. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Kaushik.
All right. So the first case study I want to talk about is about a leading real estate technology provider who is hosting and managing real estate platforms, internet-based platforms, websites, CRM applications, lead management, and marketing suite as well. So, in short, it's quite a lot of applications that they've hosted, which are completely real estate-based ones. So they have their application IT support teams as well, spread globally. So they went on to migrate their workloads from their data center to AWS. But they've had their own set of challenges. So the business challenges they've had, the first one, they have had all their applications hosted in their in-house data center. And they've had a lot of issues with respect to infrastructure outages, which was caused by network connectivity or power availability. Adding to that, the global expansion was also in progress, right, which requires the client to have applications loaded at a very lower latency, and they were also looking out for options to use some caching techniques like content delivery network (CDN). It was a multi-tenant application as well that was serving like 100 plus customers. The environments of different customers were isolated using role-based access controls. In short, it's called RBAC controls, right? And it was configured at different layers and components as well. Right? So there was probably quite a complex architecture as well there. And then most importantly, we had to ensure that there was no loss or compromise of the functionality of the application, because it is crucial part during the migration. And I mean, as the cloud migration was on the cards, one of the limitations was also that the internal IT teams were not 24/7 or 365, right? And they were not able to do managed services, manage their own cloud environment. So that's when Cloud Kinetics pitched in. So we started off with the assessment of the current data center. So complete infrastructure on the data center was assessed. And then we did a study of their workloads and their functionalities as well. Basically to support the required functionality, so they already have a complex functionalities built into their application platform. So we had to make sure that when they migrate to AWS, the functionalities will continue to work. So we had to probably do some refactoring as well there. So we explored the feasibility of using different cloud native components that also made the infrastructure quite modernized as well. We do in the process. The migration and go live was basically planned in 3 phases, considering the infrastructure landscape and the business impact. It was performed in a complete phased manner, and we were able to deliver the entire commit. We were able to deliver the entire migration project within the committed timelines, right? Which was really nice for us to do that. And the Arcus cloud management platform, which is our Cloud Kinetics proprietary management platform. So that was used to manage and monitor all the cloud assets of the customer 24/7. Right? So which will also keep the cost under check, the governance, and then security as well. success metrics achieved through this engagement, the rapid assessment phase followed by the accelerated multi-phase migration. The customer was also able to quickly move out of their current data center because a lot of components were up for a hardware refresh soon. So it helped them really well there. The migration from the legacy third-party appliances to a native AWS components, where we did some refactoring to modernize their infrastructure. And then a well-architected review was conducted 3 months from go live, just to ensure that the architecture and the security controls for the environment remains compliant even after the migration. And cost optimization, once the steady state was reached for the environment, we did make recommendations, implemented some reserved instance pricing model. So that helped to bring down the overall cost of the environment of the cloud as well. That I'll move on to the next slide. This one is about a modern telco provider in India. They offer specialized bandwidth services for enterprise and media customers primarily. Yeah. They have operations team working from different parts of the country, and with a plethora of software suites as well. So this case study is more of implementation on the cloud. They've had their own set of challenges as well. So initially, they had to build a OSS platform, an operations support system platform for their own network infrastructure. And the initial thought was that they will build that platform in their existing data center. But there was another challenge ahead where they had to hit the global market very soon. This was all on their roadmap as well. So the in-house data center had scalability limitations. So they had to also consider how they're going to scale out when they want to reach the global market. So there was a need to also reduce the infrastructure maintenance cost. So the client decided that they will host the infrastructure on AWS for its well-known agility, flexibility, and scalability. And again, after the migration, they didn't have the internal IT team that can do a 24/7 managed services, and then making sure that the lights are on. So Cloud Kinetics ensured that they did a complete thorough review of their the requirements. Architecture on AWS was completely designed with high availability, performance, and security. The entire deployment was also through automation, which is an infra as a code approach, which included all AWS best practices, starting from implementation of a landing zone and a control tower for better account structure, governance, and continuous compliance. So now they have multiple accounts as well, and then centralized costing dashboards, security dashboards, and all of that. Adding to that, there was a need to have a good connectivity within their teams as well, office location, data centers, etc. Because there's a support team is the backbone of their entire product. So secure, reliable VPN connectivity was established between their office network, data center, and AWS cloud. And also keeping the importance of this connectivity in mind, a fallback option was also provisioned, ensure that there is seamless connectivity. And they post the migration and go live. The Arcus cloud management platform was also enabled for them. And so the environment, the workloads that are running on AWS is completely being managed and monitored by Cloud Kinetics Managed Services team. Some success metrics identified from this project. One is the simplicity and transparency of cloud infrastructure setup and cost. The upfront cost that we had estimated for this customer worked out really well. That there were no surprises when we did that, and the complete implementation as well as the managed services now using our Arcus Cloud Manager platform is completely transparent. Basically, Arcus is a self-service platform, so customers complete control over the cloud environment, what we are running on it, how is it being monitored, what are the health of the assets, cloud assets, etc. Infrastructure, the complete, the implementation was done within the agreed timelines. and also the hybrid connectivity that I was talking about between the data center, office network, and the AWS VPC was all done with the failover. So there was another successful part of the entire engagement. Post-implementation support beyond usual infra support, where Arcus also has capabilities to monitor the application endpoints, application level monitoring as well as part of the platform. So that has really given us a way to go beyond infrastructure support and making sure that we keep monitoring the customers' endpoints and then ensuring that the lights are on all the time. With that, I think we're done with my case studies. Over to you, Ankita.
Thanks, Nagesh, Karthik, and Kaushik for the wonderful insights. Thank you, Kaushik. We'll now take a couple of questions from the chat window. Feel free to type into the chat box. So we are ready with the first question. It's from Vasant. When you talk about the cost reduction, is this one time when we move to cloud, or will you help in optimizing the cost post go live or on system which are running already on AWS?
Thanks, Ankita. I will take that. So good question, Vasant. So one time is, so definitely during the architecture, right? So the first part of the question, definitely during the architecture, we will make sure that's the most cost optimized solution, right? But post, once you deploy, right? And the whole idea is our managed services, when I spoke about both CK's managed services and the Arcus cloud management platform, it's continuously being designed to help optimize on cost. How that is even from an AWS perspective, there's recommendations, right? So it's an automated recommendations, but sometimes recommendations only talk about the financial plan you can take, whether how you convert from your on-demand to reserved instances, which is good. But most businesses also are aware why they cannot go to RI for some. So our platform and our service focuses on a review, a quarterly review that can identify based on the inputs from the automated platform, right? Recommendations. We also have machine learning based forecasting that will also talk about if we grew in this space based on the previous 6 months of data. Here's how your utilization and cost look like over the next few months. With that said, what are the items we can identify? It's a combination, right? Take the inputs from your cost and also from your bills, and also take the inputs from the utilization. Are we paying a lot for servers that aren't being utilized? That's the real gives us the real insight into how we can continuously do cost optimization, and we do it as part of our reviews. So we do support post go live as well.
Thank you, Karthik.
Ankita, this is Nagesh here. I just wanted to add a quick point to the answer to this question on price reduction. I just wanted to quickly call out that AWS has had a history of price reduction, but the point here is the price reduction is about the reduction of the platform cost itself. But Cloud Kinetics as a partner brings in that experience to reduce the cost while the workload is operational on the cloud also. I just pasted a link on some of the blog posts that talk about the price reduction. So might want to go through them to understand the price reduction history of various AWS services. Thank you, Ankita.
Thanks, Nagesh, for your inputs. The next question is from Chirag. How do we make a choice that which cloud provider is best for us?
Would you like to take that, Nagesh?
Which cloud provider is the best? Okay, sure. Did you have any particular workload on your mind? I mean, as I was going through my slide deck, I called out a few statistics, right? So in terms of the diversity of the workloads, we have SAP, VMware, Microsoft, mainframe. All of these workloads are currently running on AWS, and I also showed that this is a the number of workloads that are running on AWS is non-trivial. It is quite significantly high. So in terms of diversity, AWS is definitely there. Price reduction, I already mentioned, where I called out the price reduction history over the past number of years. In terms of pace of innovation, AWS regularly announces new services almost every reinvent. In fact, I called out one of them in today's presentation on the application migration services. So in terms of pioneering, in terms of the velocity of feature releases, price reduction, the simplicity of working with the cloud platform itself, the rich and the broad partner ecosystem, of which Cloud Kinetics is one example. I think all of these things help you decide the cloud provider, and AWS is definitely one of the market leaders in the cloud computing business.
Yeah, Chirag, I'd like to add to that that as a partner, we continue to work with the large CSPs. Ultimately, there's more factors that go into a customer's decision, but from an AWS perspective, the biggest factors are, they've been around for longer, and they were the pioneers in the in the infrastructure as a service cloud technologies. We have worked, and we see a lot of customers using that as a benchmark, right? Because the long duration and the history or lack of history of any major problems, during the long duration. These are factors that give the picture of stability in the customer's mind, and that's why they choose AWS.
Thank you. I could see that Palash has asked the question and Nagesh has already addressed with few links. But I'll take the first part of the question, which is, can you suggest to use quality in the secondary region as DR to reduce overall TCO?
He
wants to know more about AWS. So if you've taken that in the chat, then I can move to the next question.
Actually, I didn't take this one. To be honest with you, I didn't quite follow. Could you please repeat that, Ankita?
Yeah, so the question from Palash is, can you suggest to use quality in the secondary region as DR, disaster recovery, to reduce the overall TCO? He wants to know more about AWS MAP program from Nagesh.
So the MAP program part is done. I think Nagesh addressed that. From Palash, I think this question is needs a little bit more clarity. We'll be happy to take it offline. But if this is what we think it is, it's about the DR part, especially in secondary regions. I think it's more about how do we want to make sure that with the data, with the failovers, with the cutovers being assured with an RTO or RTP for customers, that's very important. Typically, in a secondary, in our case, we talk about secondary region being, obviously outside India, in which case, for the few customers that is very important. Let's take Singapore as an example. The RPO or RTOs are a very, very major factor, which goes into how we design and how we continuously replicate data, etc. There are costs associated with data transfer as well. That's just an outline for everybody. I think there is a particular point you want to check, Palash, but I will be happy to take it offline as well.
Moving on to next question from DR, case study real estate. How large file system pertaining to BIM process dealing with Autodesk software got managed using cloud services, and how the application was optimized through AWS services?
Okay, this is a particular. This is very particular to the particular case study that Kaushik was talking about. In which case, we will respond with respect to the details of the software, right? Just be assured that yes, there are different types of applications that have that particular. In some cases, I think if we can stretch it a bit, it's about not only just the application in the database, but also a lot of static image files, being in the associated. From a latency perspective, being called up by the application, but larger files which would exist in on-prem scenario in the same machine, right? So from a file system perspective, particularly, there are many options now in AWS, right? You can talk about images being stored in S3, being retrieved, and then cached using CDNs in some cases. But here that's not the case, I would assume. It's also about NFS and EFS, multiple options that we can utilize for a faster retrieval of, ideally, I think that's the objective of the question. How do we retrieve? How do we store and retrieve files in the file system in a most efficient manner? And we've done that, and we will be happy to talk about that particular application and how we did that and how it's been optimized, again, in a detailed email. Nagesh, would you like to add something to this from an AWS perspective?
So yeah, I mean, if it is about the storing the files on AWS, of course, there are a number of solutions in terms of storage and replication from on-prem to cloud. We can bring in those services to efficiently store the data on cloud. There is a whole transfer family. There is a whole service called as transfer family dedicated to migrating the files from on-prem to cloud. There are other mechanisms such as the Snow family also, where you can even get some storage on your on-prem. So we can use a combination of these services to effectively manage the storage of data on cloud.
Thank you. The other question from Prasad is, can the service provider perform a cloud readiness assessment for us?
If by service provider you mean the cloud computing providing organization like AWS, so MAP program actually has a MRA, which is Migration Readiness Assessment, as a component of the overall MAP program. So yes, the short answer to your question would be the readiness assessment can be done with one of the partners, say for example, Cloud Kinetics.
Okay, then we have one question from Mani Maran. How to reduce cost for S3 and EC2 snapshots?
Well, on EC2 snapshots, I would like to know more details, but with regards to S3, the intelligent tiering as an option is already available, which you can define so that the files are automatically moved from one storage zone to another storage zone. Using a combination of these intelligent tiering policies or the storage zones, you can certainly bring in significant reduction in your S3 storage costs.
Okay, then hello? Yeah. So
yeah,
then
I'd like to add that, Ankita, I'd like to add to that saying, from a snapshot management perspective, right? Ultimately, the storage costs are what they are, right? It's about using the combination of tiering solutions, using the archival, the Glacier as in backup to S3, backup to backup. And also from a snapshot perspective, our platform, and there's a lot of management around snapshots. We see a lot of customers, actually, one part of it goes into cloud sprawl, right? Once they set up the backups and then, the older backups are not deleted, there should be a mechanism, first the policy, and then the implementation of the policy, which our platform enables. We have a Arcus cloud management platform that enables implementing those policies around retention and timely deletion of the older snapshots, which helps saving costs. So whole lifecycle policy of backups, if it's clear, if it's defined clearly, we can implement it through using a tool. That will help save costs on that.
Okay. So there's another question from Mani Kandan. Why Mac not implemented in AWS? Upgrade the OS from 2008 server to latest without disturbing live. In AWS, any plans, services available? Assume Win plus SQL billing need to change. Windows Server 2019 SQL web /standard/ENT to Windows Server 2019 in AWS instance without disturbing the live environment. Any possible in AWS? That's quite a technical question.
So Mac has been announced on AWS. I just pasted a link. Oops, I should have given you a better link. But yeah, Mac is available on AWS. You can spin up Mac instances on AWS. The second portion of your question, I mean, I admit it's a bit, I mean, I'm not 100% clear exactly what the question is. I mean, are you saying that we want to, I mean, the requirement is to change the operating system of your migrated workload automatically, or I mean,
yes, yeah, we need to upgrade from 2008 server to latest OS, but it's the end of product and all. So in that case,
yeah,
without disturbing the live environment, can be upgrade.
So one of the migration, maybe this is a good test case for the newly announced migration service that we just now announced, the application migration service, the MGN. Because it also uses the cloud endure migration under the covers, and one of the features of the service is to reduce the downtime as much as possible. So I would look into the MGN as a possibility to your scenario actually.
Thanks, Nagesh.
And third point is, I think that Windows Server plus SQL is running with whether it's web or standard or enterprise, as a recurring cost monthly basis. I need to stop SQL alone, but Windows Server let it be continued with the same server because we don't want that recurring building for that purpose. At the same time, all the application settings are running apart from SQL. In that case, any other possible to reduce or recurring can be stopped? Only SQL alone.
Well, I mean, you are going to use SQL eventually on AWS either as an RDS or some other service.
Correct.
So there will certainly
Yes.
be OPEX involved, no doubt about it. But that's one possibility. In terms of overall migration, maybe you could consider one of the managed services for databases, and your compute can keep on continue running the way it is now.
So I'll be taking two more questions. One is from Ritam. Why AWS? Why not other cloud platforms? It will help us to take decisions.
Yeah, so I mean, the question would have to be more well-defined as to which workload are we talking to. What are some of the other parameters of the scenario or the opportunity we are talking about, and then we can see how best to address your questions. And in general, like I was mentioning in my deck, the number of services that we offer, the rate of new services that are launched, some of the pioneering things that we have done in terms of Lambda or serverless database like Aurora, and number of support for custom built, purpose built databases. These are some of the reasons why AWS as a platform becomes very attractive, given the breadth and the depth of the services that are available. The history of price reduction. I mean, prices only go down as far as the platform costs are considered in AWS. So the number of regions and availability zones, so these are some of the other factors that one would like to consider. So put together all of this and also the the specifics about the workload that we're talking about, AWS could certainly be a compelling reason to migrate your workload into.
Thanks. And the last question is from Hemant. There are a growing number of cloud migration and service providers out there. Why should our company choose Cloud Kinetics? What sets it apart from the competition?
Great question. And that's the truth. That's a very, very important question for customers to decide. Typically, and to be very, very frank about it, right? So it's the same as choosing service providers for the purpose that you want to choose them for. What do we typically see in service providers? Reputation, experience, right? So when I spoke about, and of course, the badges, the certifications. So there are a lot of companies, obviously cloud computing becoming more and more popular and more expansive. And so therefore, a lot of companies, existing service companies, as well as new companies focusing on that have mushroomed overnight, so to speak. But you can always see the leaders and the laggards. So without boasting too much, we've been in business for 9 years, focusing only, we are a born in the cloud partner. Cloud Kinetics is born in the cloud partner. We are a premier cloud partner. All these certifications come because of our experience and our use cases and our case studies, customer public accreditations. As you can see on the slide deck I showed about the larger customers in India, we have big conglomerates such as ITC, TVS Group, Sony. So these are public testaments of our service. So, but whether it's CK or not, let me take a more generic answer. Whichever partner you choose, one, of course, for most customers, it's important that they be responsive, right? Earlier, it used to be that they always chose local partners, which is a very, very important criterion. But we have seen over the last year that being remote, pretty much everybody is remote, right? So you're not seeing people. It doesn't matter where you work out of. So experience, certifications, and public testaments are a good way to assess, to choose a partner. Just the same way you would choose a CSP as well. Good question. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Karthik. So while our speakers are in the process of selecting the winner of Best Question Asked, please take a moment to fill out the short survey by scanning the QR code in front of your screen. You can also click on the link shared in the chat box. Now, I would like to ask Karthik to announce the winner for the best question asked. Over to you, Karthik.
Great. It's been a pleasure answering questions, and I think we still have missed some. We'll be, like I said, I think there are a couple of questions which I promised to address offline, and we'll do that as well. I think we have from the registrations, we have the email as well. We'll definitely do that. Having said that, some of the questions around, choosing CSP was good. I would like to, we have to pick one among all of them. All of them are very good questions. I'd like to pick the question. I think it was from Vasant about how do we, control cost, not only bring cost into consideration, not only during the one-time setup, but also going forward. Right? This is a question. The reason we chose this question is a lot of customers have asked us, right, about how do we control cloud sprawl? How can a partner or AWS help us in maintaining and managing the cloud costs, because a lot of them are answerable to CFOs. And truth be told, a lot of decisions by companies are being made based on cost and a budget and a 3-year, 5-year expense, right? The top line being fixed on the ceiling being fixed. And so the IT department is answerable for if any cost balloon out of control. So that question is very, very relevant for all of us. And we have seen that coming from customers. So I would like to choose Vasant's question on how do we not only help in cost optimization during the one-time deployment, but also on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Vasant, for that.
Congratulations, Vasant. So with this, we'd like to close the webinar session. Thank you all for joining this session. Keep a lookout on our website and YouTube channel for the webinar recording. Have a great day, and we hope to see you in the future events. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for a wonderful afternoon.